Shavua Tov, life is a journey of growth, and on that journey there can be many stops. With this understanding, we can stop and think about our own personal journeys. The patriarchs and other biblical figures led lives that were journeys. We attribute to them certain character traits, such as Jacob being the man of truth, but he wasn't born that way. He earned it. He traveled from being the one who said, "I am Esav, your firstborn," to indeed being the man of truth. Abraham went from being a man who was childless to becoming, quote, the Av Hamon Goyim, the father of many nations. And Joseph went from being a young, and pardon me for saying this, annoying, tattletale little brother to becoming a father figure to both Pharaoh and the children of Israel. And Moses as well has his journey, as does his wife Zipporah. Let's look at one of the most mysterious episodes in our Torah reading. Moses has been sent by God to Egypt to liberate the children of Israel. He travels with his family and comes to an inn, and there God comes to kill him. So Zipporah immediately circumcises their son Eliezer, saving the day. This is spooky. What does it mean? Much ink has been spilled about this episode, but one thing does emerge clearly: that this was related to the fact that Eliezer needed to be circumcised. Why hadn't he been circumcised? Well, let's first look at the story from the perspective of Zipporah and understand her journey. In a previous lesson, I talked about the tragic mistake that some parents make in saying, "I will let my children decide their own religious identities. I don't want to decide for them." That is wrong. We have a duty to advocate without reservation for the Jewish faith. We must teach our children Torah and bring them up to be loyal members of Am Yisrael. And this may be the journey that Zipporah needed to take, because Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says something quite astounding. He, based on a midrash, says that Zipporah had made a deal with Moshe that this boy would be dedicated to an idol. Yes, you heard that correctly, an idol. How was that possible? Moses agreed to this? So remember, everyone goes on a journey in life. The rabbis tell us that the Israelites merited redemption because they did not change their mode of dress, their language, or their names. They kept the Hebrew names of the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, except 3 people who seem to have Egyptian names. The first 2 are the midwives called Shifra and Puah, who the rabbis tell us are none other than Yocheved and Miriam, the mother and sister of Moses and Aaron. Why are they called Egyptian names here, Shifra and Puah? So I apologize for not remembering the source, but one comment I read explains that this was Pharaoh's way of getting them to comply with his murderous order. He had ordered them to make sure that no male baby survived the childbirth. Pharaoh understood that no sane Israelite woman would ever carry out such a horrible and immoral command. So he wanted to undermine their Israeliteness, as it were, to make them identify more as Egyptians and be loyal to them. Then he could call on that loyalty to get them to do his bidding against the perceived enemy, the Israelites, hence the Egyptian names. You know who else, and that failed, of course, thank God. You know who else kept an Egyptian name? According to many commentaries, Moses. He got that name from Pharaoh's daughter when she plucked him out of the river. Indeed, when he shows up at that well in Midian, the daughters of Yitro describe him as being an Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man. Think about it. While he knew he was a Hebrew, he grew up in the palace of the Pharaoh, and then he lived in Midian for 60 years, not sitting in a Beit Midrash in the study hall. He was just living his life like a normal Egyptian expat. So Zipporah's request wasn't so far-fetched. According to Rabbi Hirsch's explanation, Zipporah was hesitant to commit their son to a Jewish identity. Indeed, up until this point, as we say, this was a journey, and they didn't start off with the strong Jewish identity, neither she nor, it seems, Moses. And that's why God came to exact punishment at that inn. Because either the punishment was on Moses or on Eliezer the baby. There's an opinion that says it was Eliezer's life that was in danger. But either way, it was because Zipporah needed to make this journey and change her perspective about identity. Not to let your kid choose what religion he or she wishes to be, but rather to make the choice to commit. And so Zipporah makes the choice to commit. She herself performs the circumcision, permanently deciding that her son will be a full member of Am Yisrael. Magnificent. Now, what about Moses' journey? Aside from Zipporah's journey, there's another element, and it's an important one. I will admit that when I read this story, my mind immediately goes to the binding of Isaac. Let's think about that. Abraham has been promised that Isaac is his emissary to the future. This long-awaited son will be the one to carry the tradition forward. And then, out of the blue, God commands Abraham to take him to Mount Moriah and offer him up as a burnt offering. Doesn't that completely contradict and halt this entire thrust of Abraham's life? And here, in our story with Moses, all the more so. God just spent a week convincing Moses to go to Egypt. Moses had been reluctant, with excuse after excuse why he couldn't do it. He wasn't worthy, the people weren't worthy, he stuttered, etc. So now, after a week, finally Moses has been convinced, he agrees, and he sets forth. And what happens? God comes to kill him. What gives? So let's go back to Abraham. Abraham had wanted this son Isaac so badly that, I believe, he was overly invested in him. I believe that God was intervening to save Isaac from being sacrificed, as it were, smothered by a hug too strong. It seemed that Abraham had forgotten that his mission was more than just making sure that Isaac prospered. So God was telling Abraham to sacrifice him. In other words, to take a step back and allow Isaac to grow on his own, and to not forget that he, Abraham, had his own missions to fulfill. Don't be the parent who only lives for their children. Find the proper balance, and that's exactly what happened. I think the same process in reverse is what happened to Moses, because Moses was focused on his own mission, almost to the exclusion of everyone else, including his family. And I understand how he got there. When he first encountered God at the burning bush, God told him to remove his shoes. Why remove his shoes? Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik explains that when one wears shoes, one feels free to come and go as they please. But when they are barefoot, they are rooted to that spot. Walking is difficult and painful, with stones and thorns. And Moses learns the lesson that his very life had to be in that place, so to speak, that his mission became his prime focus. And the rabbis elaborate. Why was Moses punished with almost death at that inn? Well, he was on his way to fulfill this all-encompassing mission, and had stopped at an inn on what happened to have been the 8th day of Eliezer's life, the day when he was supposed to be given his circumcision. But Moses didn't do it immediately. He first had to arrange the lodgings. He needed to get the Shabbos key, some extra pillows, the Wi-Fi code, whatever. Then he would get around to the circumcision. And for this delay, say the rabbis, the angel came to take Moses' life. This was the moment when Moses learned that a mission in life, a job, a career, a business, must never cause one to neglect the most important people in one's life, their family. They are a mission too. I once read in a book on efficiency about a man who worked crazy hours and was barely home enough to have a relationship with his young children. But one evening he was driving home from work, very late as usual, when he passed by the playground that his children had played in when they were toddlers, and he had hardly been there with them because he left that job to his wife while he stayed at the office. Suddenly he felt a need to stop, and he parked the car, and then he broke down in tears. He had missed that part of his children's life. He had been a father in absentia. And from then on, he resolved to change things and rebuild his relationship by being there, more present in their daily lives and at their important moments. Reminds me of the famous Harry Chapin song, Cats in the Cradle. So Moses, even by this small delay to arrange his lodgings before he did the circumcision, had shown that he regarded his mission to his family as of secondary importance to his mission to Israel and to the world. And that was not okay. God corrected him by sending that angel, and it was actually his family, his wife, who saved him. These two journeys, Zipporah's journey of identity and Moses' journey of balance in his life's missions, are journeys that we all take. May we all successfully arrive at the promised land of holiness and happiness, of nation and family, of love and unity.